All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're calling from. We appreciate you joining us today. Today, we're going to be doing a webinar on lean portfolio management and the guardrails around it. My name is Nick Horseman, and I'm with Targetprocess. I'll be the moderator for today's session. If there's any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to type them in the questions box. We're going to try to answer as many as possible live, but we may need to table some depending on how many we get. For today's speakers, we have Kathy Marshak from Icon Agility Services. Kathy is a SAFE Fellow and SBCT. She's also a Business Agility Transformation Coach. And then from Targetprocess, we have Mark Debian. Mark is an SBC and also one of our Senior Product Specialists. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick it off to Kathy and we'll get started.
Great. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to just turn off my camera here. I think we decided we were going to do that. So there we go. And let's review today's agenda. I'm going to start by setting the portfolio management context, and then we will review the 4 lean portfolio management guardrails. I'll talk a little bit about how we use them in practice, what they mean, and then we'll turn it over to Mark, and he'll demonstrate how these guardrails are used in practice, what they look like in Targetprocess. With that, let's get started. Setting the context begins with understanding how traditional project-based funding typically works. I've worked with a lot of organizations that use a traditional annual planning process, and I've seen this pattern over and over again. You've completed your planning for the next fiscal year, you start your new fiscal year, you've been working for a month or two, and suddenly product managers or product owners or somebody has a great new idea. It's such a great idea, it's going to add value to your customers, it's going to help your company make money. And then you have a project manager who says, great idea. Too bad we didn't think of it when we did our fiscal year planning. It's not funded. We can't work on it. So keep working on those less exciting, less valuable ideas. That's a sad situation. We can do better. With the Scaled Agile Framework's approach to lean budgeting, we shift from trying to have an entire slate of projects for the next fiscal year. We stop funding projects and we instead fund development value streams. A development value stream are all of the people, their activities, their tools, their learnings that help you go from an idea to your solution that you're putting into the hands of your customer. So that's what we fund. We fund the people. This idea of allocating funding to each development value stream helps us reduce waste and overhead associated with traditional annual project planning. It allows us to really fund these long-lasting team of agile teams, which within SAFE we refer to as agile release trains. Because we're funding this long-lasting team of agile teams, or an ART, we are able to decentralize decision-making to product managers or solution managers if we have a solution train. Because we can decentralize decision-making, it allows us to be much more responsive to changes in the marketplace, to customer reactions, to the solutions that we've put into production, and so forth. It allows us to avoid delays caused by waiting for funding. So when that great new idea emerges, we can respond to it. Now, this idea of having a really large bucket of money to fund a development value stream can seem a little bit scary. And this is where the 4 guardrails come into play. Guardrails help ensure that we are making the most from our investments within that development value stream. So let's look at these 4 guardrails. These guardrails help balance near-term opportunities with our long-term strategy. It ensures that the investments are approved by the people who have fiscal responsibility. It helps ensure that we are making investments not only for today, but for the future as well. And it ensures that when new ideas emerge, we have people evaluating them and helping to prioritize, looking at all of the value that needs to be delivered holistically. So we're going to step through each one of these 4 each of these 4 guardrails in detail. The first guardrail we want to explore is guiding investments by horizon. So within the Scaled Agile Framework, we've borrowed the horizon model. And as you can see here, we start with ideas in Horizon 3. We're doing research on new technologies, new business models, perhaps new partnerships or acquisitions. And so we're doing research. As we are evaluating these potential solutions, some of these ideas will prove not feasible or not desirable for some reason. So we will stop investing in those solutions. Some solutions will move into Horizon 2, where we may have limited use. We might test a solution in a particular market. We might test a solution with a particular customer segment. Some of these limited use solutions may become our new way of running our business. And those solutions are moving into Horizon 1. This is where we are really maintaining and enhancing the solutions that help us run and grow the business. Over time, we will discover that some of these Horizon 1 solutions should be decommissioned or retired. Why? Because they're being replaced by some new technologies that have come through the Horizon 3 and 2 funnels. So we want to guide our investments by horizons to help us make sure that we've got the right balance. As we look at our investments, we know that we will have on a rolling basis new significant ideas or initiatives that may affect one or more development value streams, that may affect many teams within those development value streams, and it may require a long time to build these solutions. In SAFE, we refer to these big efforts as epics. These are our vision for the future. And so in a nutshell, the way we approve these significant initiatives is to use what we call a portfolio Kanban system. This is a series of steps with associated exit criteria and policies and identified decision making, and going from identifying a potential epic, having an epic owner who will lead some analysis and research work, will work with a variety of roles within the organization to help develop a business case and decide what is the minimal viable product that we need to create. As the epic owner is doing research, we can evaluate whether this epic is of sufficient size or impact that it needs to be evaluated by a lean portfolio management team. Typically, executives, business owners who are looking across the entire portfolio to make those strategic decisions. Once the epic has been approved and prioritized using weighted short job first, then when the agile release trains or solution trains have capacity, they'll pull the work, decompose the epics into their features, and then have those features move through SAFE's PI planning process. While we are gathering the results, our lean portfolio management team can evaluate the results, determine whether or not the leading indicators are telling us to keep moving ahead or if we should pivot in another direction. And there are governance activities built into SAFE's approach to facilitating lean portfolio management. Now, that's a really generic workflow. What's important to keep in mind is that your organization's portfolio Kanban system can vary. Here you see a number of portfolio Kanban states. What state names you use is one of the most obvious ways to customize a portfolio Kanban system for your situation. But what's really important are some of those other bullet points: setting your WIP limits, defining your exit policies, setting thresholds for what needs to go through the portfolio Kanban system and what can be handled by a solution train or a agile release train on its own. So setting up your portfolio system is a very important guardrail. So what I want to do now is turn this over to Mark, who will show you those first two guardrails in practice in Targetprocess. Mark?
Great, thanks, Kathy. Let me just set up my screen sharing here.
Sure, and as you're doing that, I'll just ask the participants to think about whether or not they already manage their investments by horizon, and if they can see those horizons, excuse me, within their portfolio Kanban system.
Hold on, I'm having a little issue here with my presenter mode, so.
Nick, can you try to make Mark presenter?
Yep, I just tried to. Mark, why don't you hop off and hop back on, and I'll ask a couple questions while you're doing that.
Okay, so sounds good. I'll be right back. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
No worries. And we had a couple good questions come in, Kathy, that I wanted to run by you. The first one, this person was not clear on how a new idea can be funded and how can money be put on a new idea and taken away from something else.
Great. And so in SAFE, we stop funding projects. So in a mature organization that's applying the Scaled Agile Framework, the concept of projects goes away. And instead, we fund our development value stream. So think of it as just funding all of the people who do the work. Then, if you do that, then you spend your energy talking about, well, what should we work on? But we don't try to predict it, a few months in advance. We can work on a rolling basis. And that way we can refine our priorities as necessary.
Perfect, thank you. Another good question came in. What types of roles may be decision makers at various portfolio Kanban stages?
Great. So the typical SAFE portfolio management team includes the SAFE role of business owners, and these are typically senior leaders or executives, depending upon the organization, who have fiscal responsibility for the solutions that are being built. The other people, typically part of a portfolio Kanban system, may include people responsible or having some oversight for compliance. Very often we have marketing or sales leaders from a business perspective. So it's a mix of business and IT leaders supplemented by typically finance, somebody from the finance side. And they work as an executive or leadership team to make sure that the strategy is being executed effectively by the Agile release trains. Okay, Mark, I see you up and running. That's great.
Yeah, it looks like I got the gremlins out of my computer. So again, thanks everybody, and thanks for that overview of the first two sections of those guardrails, Kathy. We're going to walk through how we deploy those and how those look inside of our target process solution. So what I'm showing here, as Kathy just pointed out, is target process. So the way this works is there's a series of views over here on the left-hand side, and these views are going to be organized for how you and your process are going to work. I have a series of favorites here that we're going to be walking through as part of the demonstration today. And the nice thing about our solution is it's very flexible. So if you need to create, say, a new way to do, or if you want to put additional things under your program menus, you can very easily do that by creating your own views, your own dashboards, roadmaps, boards, and anything you need to do to make sure that this fits to your specific process. So while we do support SAFe, we also support different variations of that, all the different ways that SAFe works, as well as other methods and modes as well. We support this all the way down to the Scrum team level. So as you're looking at the teamwork here in our work structure, we organize the tasks up into stories, the stories all the way up eventually into our portfolio epics. And if you don't use these terminologies in our solution, it's very easy for you to go ahead and configure those in other ways. So it's not just a one way to go ahead and do this. That's the nice thing. We also can align, to larger organizational goals. So some tools that are out there are just issue tracking tools, or maybe they have features and stories, but we can align all the way up to the big objectives and goals. We can have solution trains and our way to organize these, and we'll go through some examples here as well. And then there's a lot of other ways that we can help to enhance or make sure that your teams have all the information that they need. So again, just a high level view of the starting point of target process. If you want to, we're going to start at that high level and looking at it from the horizontal guardrails and being able to make sure that we can guide by investments. So the first thing we're looking at is an example of a dashboard view. And in this dashboard view, we've set this up for senior leaders or managers or people that are in charge of or owning these various different horizons and how we've done this planning. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we've got the investments in the right segments here. So this is the work that we have planned in our quarterly plans across the bottom. And each of these is showing how we've invested, and we want to be in, say, a 60% range. This is what we've said for the investment track. So these are things that we're either investing or extracting on, and we can see how many features we've planned and the delivery we've done so far. We're just over that 60, we're at 77%. We can also track our emerging tools or features or work that we're doing. So this is looking at it from an emerging standpoint. We want that to be in the 20% range. So we dropped that way down in the last quarter, but we can then use this to make sure that we're in that same track. Same thing with evaluating or retiring. So as we're looking at what we want to evaluate at 15%, or we want to get rid of some things so we can make room for some of those other evaluating and emerging ideas, we can use these horizontal guardrails to make sure that we're moving forward with the right plan, and then we'll be able to track that work as we go along. So again, starting with these guardrails, it really helps us to understand and see how we've aligned that work. Now in our solution, we can break this work down a couple of different ways. Here I have my value streams that we're looking at of this portfolio of value streams. So we can budget and we can put our details under these. We'll align our teams to these value streams as well. So the portfolio would be a grouping of these value streams, and then we can break those value streams down into individual teams and see exactly how many people, how much resources are we putting into there? What do we need to do to help these teams be successful? So again, this is one way to organize that. When we look at our budgeting, we'll be able to track that along the way as well. In terms of progress and making sure we're doing the right things, this is just showing me the high level portfolio progress, and then we can drill down into these and make sure that we're achieving the goals that we want to for these individual portfolios. We would break this down a couple of different ways, but one thing we want to see is if we have maybe a portfolio that is underperforming, or even if we just want to continue to build out our backlog, we can then use our ideas intake to bring in those new ideas. We'll use the ROI calculator on there and make sure that we're moving forward, making sure we understand our expected revenue, And then we'll take these ideas and use those to generate our new portfolio epics or our capabilities or our features. So these intakes can be coming from anywhere. We even have a web page that we can give you to submit those new ideas. And then they can become part of the portfolio as we decide to create portfolio epics and features off of these intake ideas. From a value stream perspective, if we drill down a little bit more, we can see the release trains that we have planned under those value streams. And then we're going to start to align the work that our teams are doing to our strategic objectives and our OKRs if we're using objectives and key results. So we'll show an example of that in a later guardrail, but this is just one way that we can track to make sure that that we understand that the teams are aligning their work from these value streams into these various different objectives. And if you're doing something like large solution safe, some of our customers are doing multiple arts all planned together. You can use something like a solution train. So you can group them together in trains of trains and be able to work that work across multiple different instances. So this is just showing an example of that trains of trains. And we can see how many PI5 arts or program increments we're doing. And these happen to cross arts. So we can look at cross art dependencies. We can make sure that we understand how much work they're actually doing. And they even compare the planned business value to the actual business value. So if I look at PI4 here, this is showing me that our actual business value was a little bit higher than planned for PI4, but planned business value was supposed to be 60% for a credit check, and we actually fell a little bit short. So we can try to understand why that is, maybe enhance the products better to make sure that when we deliver that value in these quarterly plans, that we can make sure that we're hitting the mark and understanding exactly what we need to do. The other aspect of that is looking at those budgets and being able to break them down. So here's a budget allocation that we have, and we're budgeting across our value streams. So there's a certain percentage that we want. We're at a $6 million budget, say for this portfolio of work, and then we can see how we've allocated that budget across. On the value stream budget report here, it's showing me that we are 30% over, and that represents this 125% for the consumer banking. We can go ahead and adjust that number, and we'll just drop this down, say to 20%. So we'll only be a little bit off. We've got calculated fields to help us to generate that, as well as the allocated budget. If we want to see how we've spread that across our PIs, we can look at value streams by budget, by PI, and this is just showing us, in the quarters, how we've aligned those value streams to our PI budgets. Checking our allocated budgets to our actual costs, we're able to see how we've aligned that work and are we on track to hit our allocated budget versus our total cost. So we've gone over a little bit on total costs here, but we can get back on track by maybe going ahead and reallocating some of that work, or maybe even adding more people or teams onto this work for these value streams as we look at that. The last thing here that we can look at under budgeting is how do we allocate that across things like capitalization and operationalizing the work. So we can track these value streams and the planned CapEx and our planned OpEx, and then see how well we're doing from a percentage or a dollar amount value as we decide how much we want to be putting into cap as well as the OpEx for these different budget segments. Again, this is done by a value stream level, rolling up into budgets. And then we can also do that in other ways if you have another way that you want to go ahead and track the details for those budgets. So that's the first thing, is guiding by investment horizons. And it just shows you, a couple of different ways that we can go ahead and manage and see the details under there. The other thing is then allowing us to go in and approve those portfolios and start to take that work that we took from the idea to the portfolio epic and then break that down into smaller components. So here's an example of that portfolio Kanban like Kathy was showing. In here, we've got the states across the top, and these can be fluid. You can go ahead and change these if your process or your workflow is different. We want to highlight where we have things that are maybe violating a WIP rule. So we don't want to be analyzing too many things at once. So we can use this Kanban style board to make sure that we're managing that work here. In this case, we've got our big portfolio epics, and we want to break those down further. We want to add our lean business case and other details into there. So as I go in and I open up one of these, say the online banking for millennials, we can look at a details page. Now on this details page for this portfolio epic, this is where we're going to build out the, the epic hypothesis for this. We can add our weighted shortest job first scoring in here, so we can make sure we calculate that weighted score. We can also then use entry and exit criteria to decide what it is to move from one state to the other state. So as I look at my entry and exit rules on this record here for this portfolio epic, when I move into the portfolio backlog, we can go ahead and add more details of things that we want to do, and we can track the work that we need to do for this definition of making sure we complete all of the work in the specific state. So these are ways that you can enhance by making sure that you understand what the teams need to do when they go from one state to the next state, and track all of the details of what you want to do for a entry or exit rules for this specific work. We can also break that work down into our lean business case, understanding what our hypotheses are, what's our MVP, how many features are we going to build into that, and then be even able to track our milestones and our features on this portfolio epic. So this is all about breaking that work down, understanding how it's aligned, and then organizing that so it rolls back up and hopefully can help us to achieve the goals that we're looking to do. All right, so that is that's one aspect of that. Looking at the states of this as we move along, we want to see the roadmap or the backlog view of that. So this shows me how we've broken that work down from our portfolio epic to our capabilities to our features, and then finally down into our stories and our defects. If you're using a third-party tool, these can come from other sources, but Targetprocess also supports the teams for Scrum and Kanban at any level. So you can do that at any level. This is rolling up and actually calculating our actual costs based on work and a story point allocation. And then we can also see the projected cost, how much we expect to be done when we complete all of the work. So we're looking at actuals and then the projected cost based on the existing stories that aren't done yet. Finally, we'll look at this on a roadmap view, and we'll be able to hopefully understand what is the big picture for this. So this is showing us those epics now as we've aligned them to our timeline. On all of our roadmaps and our board views, we can show where we have relationships, those dependencies across that work. We can also highlight where we might be going above our planned costs. So in this case, here's my planned investment and on my actual costs. So we're highlighting visually on this roadmap where we might have issues there that we need to address. We can even go out further and we can do a multi-year plan, because some of these big ideas, these big investments might span multi-years, so we can zoom out and see the details there. And then on any of these cards, you can also zoom in or zoom out to show less or more data. So if you have a lot of cards on here and you want to track this at a very small level, we can then drill down all the way into the to see the maximum number of portfolio epics we're working on, or then we can zoom back out and see our largest size, so we can track as much data as we want to on these various different roadmaps. So that gives us a little bit of a view into how we can help you to guide by investments and do approvals and other information using our portfolio. I'll hand it back over to Kathy to talk about the other two aspects of the guardrails that we want to go ahead and discuss today.
Great, thanks, Mark. And one of the things that I really appreciate in the tool and what you just showed there is how within your portfolio Kanban system, you've got a lot of clarity on the entry or exit criteria for each of those columns in the portfolio Kanban system. That level of transparency really helps people understand what's coming next and what is ready to be pulled into the next column. And of course, managing WIP is crucial. It really is one of the aspects that allows the portfolio management team to guide their portfolio and ensure that we are properly executing the strategy. We've got the right degree of focus. So let's move and look at guardrail number 3. The third guardrail is applying capacity allocation. The concept here of capacity allocation is we have a limited amount of capacity, and in SAFe, we can think about our capacity as the number of story points that an Agile release train can complete within a program increment. Just like at the team level, each team understands their team level velocity, the art understands its velocity as well. And so this guardrail of applying capacity allocation comes into play in several ways. First, within a single agile release train or a solution train, we can have discussions, we need to have discussions about how much of our capacity is being spent on new business features or capabilities, new enabler features or capabilities, and production support, or perhaps you need an allocation for reducing technical debt. This conversation that happens between product management and the system architects, or solution management and the solution architects, is understood by the business owners, and the business owners in some cases may influence the capacity allocation decisions to ensure that we are not only supporting today's needs, but we're laying the foundation for the future. These choices will impact your roadmaps. How long will it take to complete a feature or capability or an epic? And this helps us understand the larger picture of the portfolio as a whole. Of course, we use weighted shortest job first, or as you see here, WSJF, to help us find the best economic sequence of our work. And applying weighted shortest job first is also part of what we do in the various states in our portfolio Kanban system. Now, making these capacity allocation decisions is an idea that applies at all levels within the framework. So the portfolio may influence capacity allocations for epics, and that in turn influences what's happening on the solution trains and the arts. If you have an agile release train that's part of the solution train, you're going to have capacity allocation conversations between, let's say, solution management and product management. Same thing between the leaders of an art and the agile teams. These conversations help ensure alignment and supports decentralizing decision makings because some of the boundaries are clear. The fourth guardrail that we want to explore is engaging business owners. Within the Scaled Agile Framework, business owners are typically a small group of business and IT leaders. It might be 2, it might be 3 people, but this mix of business and IT leaders have fiduciary and governance responsibility. They need to make sure that the work's being done by the solution train or the agile release train are aligned to the strategy and the vision of the portfolio and the larger enterprise. So business owners may participate in activities such as developing strategy, participating and making decisions in the portfolio sync meetings where they are evaluating these new epics as they move through the portfolio Kanban system. Business owners will work with product management, solution management, system architects, solution architects to help them prepare for PI planning, ensure that they are all aligned on capacity allocation, and they'll be providing feedback as work is being developed. Again, they're helping to steer the agile release trains. Now, it's important for all of us, whether you are a coach, a release train engineer, a product owner, a product manager, to help our business owners engage effectively. So here are a few tips that you can use. I found that when I really provide ongoing coaching and education to our business owners and other leaders, it helps them more successfully support the transformation to a lean agile way of thinking and working. So these are some of the activities that we help them do. We give them questions. We help them understand how they can participate in inspect and adapt sessions, help them nudge and coach and grow their own people, helping them become better servant leaders. And of course, we want them to understand the lean and agile metrics and understand how they can use these metrics to steer and guide their train. So when we help people adopt SAFe, we really want them to understand what it means to lead in this new way. What does it mean to be a servant leader? With that, I want to turn it back over to Mark so he can show us in practice what some of these activities look like within Targetprocess.
Great, Kathy. I think this was our best transition yet. So again, I think it's great that you showed that too. So certainly from a leadership perspective and being able to lead, but also understanding this capacity planning and how we do this. So in Targetprocess, we have this plans area now where you can actually create different types of plans, and you can do them on capabilities, you can do them on features, you can do that at a portfolio epic as well. And what this allows you to do is create a sample of the plan, and then you can decide and look at the roadmap and how that work might align, as we're seeing here for this capacity. But then we can also then create a scenario 2 of that, and we can do some what if planning. So as you see here, we've created capacity by teams, or you can do it by arts, and understand what your available capacity is and how much capacity you want to try to allocate. And then you can either turn on or off that capacity and use this plan or this other version of the plan to decide how much work we want to do. Maybe we want to add or remove things off of the plan. Or we can decide if there's new items that we want to go ahead and address and who we want to assign that work to. At that point, you can calculate a new schedule for that plan, and I can calculate the new schedule, and we can compare the roadmaps of these two plans. So we can decide if we want to do scenario 2, or do we want to continue on with our existing plan or our existing scenario. The nice thing about this is if you don't like the plan, you can revert it. But if you do like the plan, you can then go ahead and apply these changes. And that's going to adjust the beginning and end dates of this, as well as the capacity that you've already gone ahead and set up for this work. So just a nice way to use a planner and do some what if scenario planning without having to commit all of that work at one time, into a specific plan. As we look at how we align that work, there's a couple of different ways we can do that. And you mentioned, the plan business, the enablers, and the tech debt. So here's a way where we can organize and understand how much work we've planned into those different buckets across the quarters or the PI plans we've done, and then how well have we done in terms of actually doing that. So we wanted to be at 60% for PI1 for our planned business value, and we were at for the business or enhancement work, we were at 50%. We wanted to be at 20% for enablers. That's where we went over. We're at 40% there. And then 10% we wanted in tech debt, and we wound up being at 6.86%. So as we align that work that the teams are doing and roll that up to a higher level, we'll be able to track how we've gone ahead and organized that work, plan versus actual, and then even create different types of reports and details that we might want to see there. In terms of another way to look at capacity, each team can put in their capacity number. And here we're looking at capacity across my teams. And as the teams decide which features they're going to build as part of the PI planning, we can help them to make sure that they put the right number of features into each team's individual bucket. So these are the features the teams are going to be organized to go ahead and deliver on. And then you can decide, do we want to go over capacity based on what the team has said that they want to do. We want to give that power to the teams to decide if they want to drag some more work over into here. That might take me over, and it does. It makes me over allocated now at 108 points. So we can decide maybe we don't do that feature here, or maybe we can negotiate and put that feature out here into PI 6 if we want to go ahead and plan that into a later program increment. So you just have some options there for going in and doing the detailed planning as you walk through that. Now at a team level, we want to make sure we can also identify those dependencies. So, all of the PI, the SAFe program, 2-day PI planning events and things are built directly into Targetprocess. So here's a case where we can track all of our dependencies across these features or other types of work. I can add new dependencies in here by adding a relationship between this feature and a dependency or a blocker. We can go ahead and set that up, and we can easily draw those. We can also move the work along here on this board as we want to go ahead and see how we've allocated the work across the various different team sprints and team iterations. So the teams need that, that capability to go ahead and look at the work that they have in there. And then ultimately, we want to align all this work to our objectives and make sure we can understand how we've aligned the work. So we calculate our weighted shortest job first, make sure we have those features aligned correctly in terms of the plan that we want to go ahead and execute. This weighted shortest job first then can be used to reprioritize or resort the work that we want to do. It also gives us a good view into what's important for this feature. Is it time, business value, or risk reduction? So we can look at the details across that. Looking back in history, we can see how well we've done in terms of delivering on our actual business value compared to our planned business value. And these are going to get set when we go ahead and set up the team objectives and the program objectives that we want to do. So each team can put in their own objectives, and then we can track with the business our planned and our actual business value, and which of these are going to be committed, or maybe it's an uncommitted goal that we want to go ahead and do. So you can make those stretch goals, or you can just go ahead and execute on the committed ones. All along, we want to make sure we're tracking to our capacity, so we can see what our capacity is compared to our effort, and we want to use this as well to track and manage where we are from that standpoint. And the last area, as you mentioned, is going to be helping those leaders to engage. So the first thing we want to look at is those big company goals that we may have set up at the very beginning. So it starts with a big objective like grow new business, or maybe increase customer revenue, and we might want to increase how well we're doing on growing the business. So here we're at 50% right now, and that's based on the key results that we've built into this ultimate objective. So we can break those ultimate objectives down into lower level objectives if we want to, and just understand what's driving the growing the new business ultimate objective. So in this case, we have specific strategic themes that we're aligning to, and then we can track things like improved net promoter score. So we have a goal to go from 20 to 75 points in our net promoter score, so we can then help the teams with those new ideas coming in, or maybe redoing how we're going to create those features, look at our capacity allocation that we looked at earlier, and really help us to drive this number so we can get this 25% up to a higher value percentage. The other thing we can track and look at it from a high level is, do we have dependencies? Are there things that we need to address, and where are those dependencies on the map of how long have they been out there? How long does it take, or when do they expire? When do we need to jump in and help working on those specific dependencies? From a feedback perspective, we have retrospectives built right into this, and we love to use this with all levels of the organization. So we like to have the leaders and team members and everyone else participate in these feedback sessions. We can collect what worked well, what didn't work well, and what do we need to improve upon. So off of these items, we'll create our action items, and we can go ahead and drive into these specific things and generate action items that the teams as well as leadership can see to help us to engage and make sure that we're understanding exactly what needs to happen across the board. Finally, the last dashboard I'm going to go through today, and I know I'm going through a lot of detailed dashboards, but there's the views that we're going to see at a portfolio or a program or a team level are also under here as well. So as the teams are doing their sprint work or other work, they can execute on that down here as well. But on this results dashboard, we're showing a couple of different views that might be helpful to help leaders engage and understand exactly where we are in the process. The first one is looking at our annual rhythm. So this is looking at our sales rhythms for last year, and then we can overlay the sales or the results that we're seeing in this year and compare these two together. In this case, we're looking at our business to business, business to consumer, and our electronic toy business for this organization. So they're looking at how do we stack up from last year's results to this year's results, and we can make sure that if there's something we need to do, or if the trend lines are headed in the wrong direction, we can go ahead and try to improve upon that. I'm a huge fan of net promoter score, so we can go ahead and calculate a monthly net promoter score, or go ahead and make sure that we understand where that is. We can chart that and see exactly where we are from a historical standpoint. Are we getting better? And that directly replies back to our OKR. So we had this key result, and that key result, basically said we want to improve upon this score of 46. So we can use this data to make sure that we're doing that. Understanding how we've delivered value and where that value delivery is another important one that leaders can look at, is to help the teams to improve, or just to make sure we understand what's going on. I like to look at this bubble chart here where it shows me, you know, how you know, where are the deadlines for the dependencies that are coming up, and is there something that we need to go ahead and do? So these ones that are lower here, we might want to go ahead and do because the deadline is coming up quickly. We can have a dependency review, and we can make sure that we understand which ones of these might need help from any level of the organization. We also want to go ahead and check out our risks, and if there are specific risks that aren't being roamed, or we want to go ahead and make sure that we're resolving those and make sure that they are in the correct state, we can use this type of a board, you know, along with all the other reports that we're looking at to understand where we are from a risk and an action item standpoint. So each risk can have risk actions on there, and then these actions can be assigned to anybody within the organization. So as a leader, you could be assigned a risk action to help the team to better you know, define what they need to do. Another good one is, you know, if we're looking at utilization of the users maybe that are being added to our system, we can then you know, overlay the you know, the current deployment, or when we're going to deploy something, and we can look at our expected users that we want based on a trajectory, and then our actual users, and we can make sure that we understand, are we hitting the mark in terms of, you know, any type of measurement that we want to do to make sure that the teams that have delivered the work are being successful. And if they're not, we can figure out action items or ways to try to help them if we can help them at all. And that might include adding additional people. It might include, you know, creating other ways to go ahead and track that. From a systems perspective, we also want to obviously look at our performance and our monitoring. So we can use something like this to, you know, a measurement like this as an organization to understand where those are, and are we hitting the mark there as well. So just to tie it back to all the things that we covered, again, we went through a couple of, you know, a lot of different dashboarding here that really helps us to understand how Targetprocess can help you, you know, guide by investments and go through the other guardrails. And then, like I said, there are a number of different ways to configure these menus underneath here, especially around PI planning and understanding how we're going to walk through the PI planning cycle. So with that, I think that those are the, you know, those are some of the ways, Kathy. Obviously, there's a lot more we can do in the solution, but those are some of the ways that Targetprocess can help engage with all levels of the organization and help try to achieve, you know, some of the guardrails around this. So I'll hand it back to you, and you can wrap it up for the presentation part.
Thank you so much, Mark. As you can see from that demonstration, there are so many opportunities to ensure that we have business owner engagement, and we are supporting the business owners in understanding what is happening, how are their investments performing, how is progress being made on delivering value, and most importantly, what are the outcomes of all of that work? As Mark showed in that example of what is the impact on user adoption of our new solution? Is it trending in the right direction, or should we make a pivot or persevere decision at this point in time? So in summary, we have covered these 4 lean budget guardrails that really enable us to move away from traditional project-based funding and budgeting into a leaner world where we fund development value streams so that we have the funding in place, and then we put energy into making sure that we are making our investments by the horizons so that we're balancing what we need to run the business today and grow the business in the future, and make sure that we've got capacity to deal with innovation opportunities. Second guardrail, approving those significant initiatives using our portfolio Kanban system, putting in the exit policies, the WIP limits, using weighted shortest job first to help us ensure we will have the best economic outcome. We're using capacity allocation to optimize value and solution integrity, making sure that we are spending some capacity on work such as laying the architectural runway, doing exploration work, increasing our ability to innovate, and reducing technical debt. And our fourth guardrail, again, making sure that we have continuous business owner engagement. All of these guardrails help us balance these near-term opportunities with long-term strategy, making sure that we have the right leaders approving these significant initiatives and supporting decentralizing decision-making and being responsive to changing needs rather than trying to predict months and months in advance what we should be working on in the next fiscal year. So with that, I want to turn this back over to Nick, who's going to facilitate a little bit of question and answer time. Nick?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. We do have a couple really good questions that came in. One I think is going to be geared for Mark, and it was around the what if planning. So the question is, do you have to create your own what if plan form, or is it built-in functionality that only needs data to be loaded in? Oop, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, the planner itself is built in, and you can do and you can create them yourself. You don't have to add any additional data. So you just set the time parameter. So that I want to either base it off of a program increment date range, or you can set your own specific date range in there. And then you select, say, I want to do it on features, or I want to do this on capabilities, or I want to do it on portfolio epics. So it is built in. You just go into the planner and you can do it from there.
Perfect, thanks. And does Targetprocess have PI planning? So I was able to answer that one, but can you elaborate on how we support PI planning?
Yeah, we're a safe platform partner, and we support all elements, whether you're doing your pre-planning for PI, creating the vision and the details on a program increment, generating all of your team sprints, being able to align the work to the program increments, weighted shortest shab first, all of the other components of that. We can give you a lot more details if you want to on how we support PI planning.
And then how do you build NPS into the system? How do you set up structure to get the inputs to come to score?
Yeah, so we have a measurement record that allows us to track different types of measurements, and Net Promoter Score is one of those. So you just create your Net Promoter Score, you put in your month or however long you're collecting that, and then you can put in that actual value that you're getting for your positive and your negative, and for your detractors and your positives and your neutral people that are tracking that. So we can give you the details on it, but it's a simple calculation of subtracting your detractors from your positives.
All right, thank you. And then just one more quick one. What is your recommendation on how the actual cost is accounted for over a PI, where it captures the dollar amounts accurately, but without overwhelming the teams and tracking the data?
Yeah, Kathy, what do you think about that one?
So you have a few options, and your context will greatly influence this. So if you have a lot of organizations can calculate in actual cost. Some do it by timesheet data. We see that a lot if you've got a lot of contractors involved, and if those funds can shift. So some people do it by timesheet data. Others stop that, and they just consider themselves being a fixed priced IT organization, and they can calculate the run rate based on the number of people involved in their train, and you can calculate cost per point, and there are lots of options that you have there, but that's more of a separate conversation.
Perfect. And then one more. In government, we need to do the acquisition of funds via the budgeting process, but it is pegged to the initiatives that were estimated ahead of time. How do you suggest to deal with changing horizons for initiatives in a year while the budget remains fixed?
Yeah, that's great. And so the way funding works in the government is different than it is in most commercial organizations. And so if you think about the more abstract outcomes that are being funded, let's say by Congress, you can use that as the budget for your development value stream. And these ideas, I think, can still be applicable in a government funded situation. The guardrails are applicable, even though your funding is different.
All right, I think that about covers it from my end. Thank you everyone for joining. We will be sharing the recording with you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.